All right. Good morning, my friends. Thank you so much for being here with Minnesota Gardening Live. I hope you have had a wonderful, wonderful day. So today we are starting what I think will be a Friday or most every Friday gardening live. So Sarah, thanks for being here. I look super sleepy today, so maybe I shouldn't do this at 9:30 in the morning. But anyway, we are here. So we got a couple things we're going to talk about today. And so the goal is to have this every Friday, have folks join, stop by, ask questions, whatever works best for you in your schedule. So thanks so much, everybody, for being here. There's a chat that you can use, and you can use that to ask questions or make comments or whatever you want to do as we go forward with this. So what we're going to do today is start out with a little bit. I've been doing some classes, online classes for folks on landscape lessons for new homeowners. And with that, we've been going over the 5 top questions. This spring, we did a big survey on landscape questions that new homeowners have, like what kind of mowers do you need to know, what kind of mowers to buy, what kind of different shrubs you want to put in your landscape, and those kinds of things. So it was a really, really great survey from quite a few folks. So I was really happy with how that all worked out. But these are the type 5 questions that people asked. And so we go through those in the course. But the number 1 question is how to deal with lawns that are just terrible. So we work through those with everybody. So I just want to go through those things real quick, because right now is the best time for doing anything with your lawns. So if you have a lawn that you want to have a traditional, like Kentucky bluegrass lawn, right now is the best time to fix those up. If you want to take your lawn and transition it to native perennials, right now is the best time to do that. If you want to take your lawn and have it be more of a traditional type lawn, but have it be a bee lawn and incorporate pollinators, incorporate flowers, other things like that into there, right now is the best time to do that as well. So in how to fix a terrible lawn, it was a lot of fun going through with folks as to how this works. And so around Labor Day, so between August 15th and September 15th is the best possible time for doing anything with your lawn. And the reason for that is because in the spring, plants, especially turf grass plants, they grow like crazy and they get really deep roots and they get really tall. They put a lot of energy into the grass tops and making seeds in the spring and all that kind of stuff. But then grass is not meant to live here. It's not native to anywhere in the upper Midwest. And so it is imported. It's not meant to really deal with or handle our summers. So they just go totally dormant during the summers if you aren't applying a lot of water, if you aren't using a lot of nitrogen fertilizer. And then they start to come back in the fall. And when they come back in the fall, they're moving, they're growing, and they are photosynthesizing and putting a lot of nutrients and things into the roots. And that is the best time for to do any lawn care kinds of things, because in general, we have decent snow cover through the winter that will have like a layer of insulation and protect the grass seed over the winter, and then it has an entire season in the spring to bounce back and come up and be happy and growing and doing its thing. So right now is the best time to fix lawns, and there are 2 main ways for doing that. 1 is overseeding, 2 is slit seeding, and I'll go into those in just a second here. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what kind of turf you want to have in your yard. So in our backyard, we have, it was a sodded Kentucky bluegrass standard turf kind of thing. But over the years, we've transitioned it to more clover, and yarrow has come in. And so we've got some other pollinators and things growing in that lawn, and the dog fertilizes it, the chickens fertilize it. So we don't do anything in the backyard. And this fall, we're going to do more to get more flowering friends into our lawn back there, because we don't water our grass very much at all. And this summer, it's just been wiped out. It's in really, really bad shape. And so we are going to seed this summer a bunch of clover and bee lawn plants into our backyard. So we're going to start experimenting a lot more heavily with bee lawns this fall and into next year. And so with the bee lawns, it's really, really great. Adds a lot of friends in there, so it will help support pollinators and all of our insect friends and do its thing there. So we've got that. And so the way you can do it is if you have smaller areas, overseeding is the best way to go. And so what you need to do is rake up. I like to take 3-prong tine and just rake up those areas. It's really easy. So you have to expose the soil, get that dead grass moved back so you can expose the soil and get that seed right directly on the soil. So you need to be able to see the soil, because that's the most important piece other than watering, is making sure that that seed is in direct contact with the soil. And so a lot of people put way too much seed down. It'll choke itself out. So don't do that. So just put a light layer of seed, as it says on the package, depending on what you're doing, and use that for the area. So make sure to mix that into the soil. If your soil is really sandy or really rocky or whatever that may be, you can get some compost or some topsoil and mix that in with it as well, just a little bit, not very much, and let them start growing. The other way is if you have larger areas. And so overseeding is really labor intensive. It's a lot of work to get that soil exposed, and it's a lot of work to get that done. So if you have larger areas, what you want to do is get what is called a slit seeder. And so you can either rent it or you can hire it out. But it's a decent sized machine that's kind of a beast to use. But what it has is a series of blades on the bottom of it that take and split open the soil, and then it drops the seed right in there. So you put the soil in the seed in a hopper, it puts, and then it slits, cuts a slit in the grass, and it drops that seed right in there. So you can do that over any existing turf. You don't need to rake it all up. You don't need to do it because you get direct seed soil contact in there. And so it works really, really well. And so you go back and forth 3-4 times, whatever you feel like. You can't really do it too much. And so that's what we're going to rent one of those and do that here for our backyard. So it gives you direct seed soil contact, and it's a lot better for larger areas, and it does a really great job for those. And so you've got overseeding, you've got slit seeding, and then the next one is where you've got dead or difficult turf. The best thing you can possibly do, which we're doing also with a big chunk of our backyard, is just to remove it. And so you want to remove and plant native plants. And so there's a lot of different great ways to do that. We've got a lot of resources here on Minnesota Gardening that you can use for that as well. And by eliminating turf, so what we want to do is I preach this all the time, so hopefully if you heard it before, our insect populations are collapsing because we have, especially in the upper Midwest, is one of the hardest hit areas because we have huge swaths of corn and soybeans and lawns where there's nothing but those plants in there. So it's a monoculture that doesn't feed our monarchs, doesn't feed our butterflies, moths, and bees, and all of our pollinators and wasps and those kinds of friends. And then therefore they don't feed our birds. And so our songbird populations are collapsing. So it's really important that we're putting this habitat in places. And so we need to make sure, and this allows us to use significantly less water, no chemicals, and significantly helps our pollinators and bird populations. So it's a really, really good thing. Again, if you have any questions or need anything, you can use the chat here. If you're on here live, or if you're watching the replay, you can shoot me a text and we can go from there. But that's the biggest thing that I've got. So, here, I'll just go through this. The 5 biggest questions that people had for new homeowners are: how do I choose the right plants? When and how do I prune shrubs? What do I do with all the leaves in the fall? How much fertilizer do I use on my lawn? And how do I fix a terrible lawn? So those are the 5 questions that people have. And we will be addressing those as we go forward on these weekly chats. So if you have anything you want to talk about as we go through these, that is awesome. So you can just shoot me a text. So now as we have these lives, I also want to go through and address some questions and different things I see in Minnesota Gardening. So to do a little more in-depth addressing of those, as well as things that I see online. And so this is the first one. And so this is from Jamie. She's a member of Minnesota Gardening Club. And Jamie had a question about her peas. And so she planted peas late in the season. And so the peas came up and they're going gangbusters. But then since it's been like incredibly hot here, as of, I think she posted this in the first week of August, the peas are starting to die back. And so there are a lot of, when you're talking about food gardening kinds of things, there are a lot of different variables that go into things. And so peas, for example, are they very, very much prefer cold seasons. So they like the spring and they like the fall, and they don't like the hot heat of summer. And so they will die back and mostly die. So I plant my peas in the spring and plant some peas again in early August so that they can come up and start flowering and doing their thing again. But they start to look like this when when it's really hot. They just start to die back and they just don't like it. So they get cranky and they kind of lose it. So it's not fun for anybody. But you can plant to avoid this and make sure to have more peas coming in the fall. If the July 15th, August 1st, somewhere in there, you start to plant peas, depending on what kind of variety and what kind of peas you are looking for. You plant those and they will start growing for you. And by September 1st, September 15th, somewhere in there, you will have peas that snap peas, sweet peas, those kinds of things will be growing. And it's called succession planting. And it allows you to extend the season and to have a lot more things going on. So peas are a cool season type food that you can grow. Other cool season foods that you can grow are all the lettuces, everything in the brassica family. So cauliflowers, broccolis, kohlrabis, all those kinds of friends. Those are all cool season. Beets are also cool season. I'm trying to think through my head what other cool season things there are. And then like peppers, tomatoes, carrots, those kinds of guys are all warm season friends through there. So check to make sure I don't have any questions. All right. So those are there. And now I'm not sure how this is going to work. So we'll just check it out and see. But we have a video from WCCO on what has been deemed as Peppergate. And I'm not sure if this is different than any other season because there are always things that happen like this. But let's see if the sound plays for everybody. Doesn't seem like it's going to. I'm not quite sure why that is. But anyway, this is a video from WCCO, which is the CBS affiliate here in Minneapolis area. And so it is talking all about Peppergate. And so this is, I think, a mostly silly kind of thing, but it is what it is. And so it is a story that's a pretty decent sized story. It goes a couple minutes here, where a bunch of people are having peppers growing that are not what they said. So this woman, you can see there, the yellow and red candy stripe peppers that she had planted what she thought was going to be jalapeno peppers, and they came up as these candy stripe peppers. And so this kind of thing happens often. I think a lot of times it's a mistake by the person. So that happens there. You see it on the Facebook groups and different things a lot of times, but a lot of times it's a mistake by the person. And then a lot of times it's also a cross-pollination issue. And so I just want to talk a little bit with this story about how seed is grown. And so the seed that we have that comes from in the seed packets all come from we try to get them from, depending on where you're purchasing from, they come from your local region. If you're buying things that are a national company and a big company, they'll come from all over. They're not going to come from a local spot. But if you are purchasing I get all my seeds from MI Gardner. And so most of those seeds come from the upper Midwest, from Michigan and that area. And I really like that. I think it's important to have seeds that come from your area because they are, if there are seeds that grow from that, you know that they grow well, you know that they grow strong in your area, and they do a good job. And so that's where I buy all my seeds from. And that's the reason that I do that. But the way you get seeds is, let's take peppers, for example. So peppers need to have cross-pollination from other plants in order to grow. And so there's a plant here, plant A, plant B is here. And so they have to have the pollen from plant A fertilize the flowers on plant B in order to get peppers and therefore seeds on plant B. And so a lot of times what happens, and this is the way you get new varieties and other things, is that if you have a green bell pepper that you really, really like, that whole row and that whole area has to be only that pepper. And so if there's another type of pepper that's, 100 yards away that can bring pollen from there over to the peppers that you're using for seed, then that will cross-pollinate and that will give you a different type and a whole bunch of different types of peppers. And so every single time you have those seeds, then those could be different things. So like if you have tomatoes in your garden and you want to save seeds for your tomatoes, if you have if you have a San Marzano tomato, if you have a slicing tomato, and if you have a cherry tomato, those three may cross-pollinate to give you different types, or probably will cross-pollinate. So those seeds are different types. So seeds of that one slicing tomato could turn out to be, especially their heirloom tomatoes. If they're hybrid tomatoes, this is a whole different thing. But if those seeds would turn out to be, could be some mix of a cherry and a saucing tomato and that kind of thing. And so it all changes in there. So that's what happens. It's seeds it's really difficult to get that and to keep that all going and to keep it perfectly pure as it goes through the entire thing. So it's a very interesting problem, and it is there. And so another thing that they said in the story was that there are only 4 seed suppliers in the nation, and that's just not true. There are hundreds of seed suppliers. So I'm not quite sure what they're saying there or why. So I need to do some more research on that and figure out what they're talking about. But there are lots of seed suppliers across the nation. So it is an interesting thing. So I'm going to go back here and talk about some more things that we see online. This is one, can I identify a weed? It is one that we see often. And so this is a buttonweed. And so it's one of my favorite weeds. It's just the happiest. It has really, really soft big heart-shaped leaves, and it gets really cool seed pods. So growing up on a farm in Iowa, it's always one of my favorite things. Weeds, if we're going to put weeds in category of things, but this is a buttonweed. It can grow to, I don't know, 6-7 feet tall. So she can get pretty massive. And I just noticed on here that I hadn't noticed before. These are the veins that run through this closer leaf. These are the veins that run through the leaf. And if you look at that further back leaf, there are squiggly lines that run through it. And that is from an insect that is called a leaf miner. So LEAF MINER. So a leaf miner. And so a leaf miner, it goes in between the 2 layers, so the top and the bottom layer of a leaf, and it gets in there and eats all of the tissue that's in between the top and the bottom of the leaf. So it started here, and then you can kind of see there's a darker speck right there. So that's where the caterpillar leaf miner bug is right now. So it's usually larvae that do this. So it was probably the egg was laid on the leaf, and then it gets in there and it just eats its way through. And it's one of those things that doesn't, there are lots and lots of leaf miners that that eat and feed on native plants. And so buttonweed is one of those. So it's a really, it's one of my favorite weeds, but it will spread like crazy, especially if you have disturbed soil. So if you're doing something new, if you're, fixing up your driveway or a sidewalk is going in or something, there'll definitely be buttonweeds that are growing in there. All right. So, I wanted to talk about one of my least favorite landscape plants, and that's Purple Leaf Sandcherry. So Purple Leaf Sandcherries, they are sold all the time because they grow really, really fast. They have what some people think are really pretty purple leaves that come out great in the spring. And then from there, they just go to hell. It's really not a great plant. And so they grow really fast. So you see them all the time in landscape in nurseries for sale, but do not buy a Purple Leaf Sandcherry because they are susceptible to so many diseases. They are native, but they are just a landscape plant that we don't need to have. So you see how they have the purple leaves here. and are growing, but they're susceptible to cankers, a lot of diseases, a lot of different things. So stay away from the purple leaf sandcherry. Now, want to talk a little bit about grubs and at least buttonweed. Velvet leaf is also called. Really easy to pull. Has a terrible root system that doesn't stand up really great. So it's fascinating. It's a good thing that it has a ton of seeds in order to make that work. So best recommendation for grub removal. So grub removal is it's a really interesting problem that we're having with Japanese beetles. And so Japanese beetles are we didn't have it nearly as badly this year. But right now, if you have grubs, right now is the best time to handle grubs. And you'll know if you have grubs, if you see something like this. This is from a client. So this is what having grubs looks like. It can kill off portions of your lawn. So you see that there's dead spots through here, and the grubs have moved basically from these dead areas because they live right below the soil, and they cut off all the roots through those areas, and then they come into the healthier grass, and so they start to eat all those roots. And so they do this in the fall. So life cycle of Japanese beetles. Most of the grubs that we have problems with here are Japanese beetle grubs. There are a whole slew of different types of grubs, including lightning bug grubs, including June bugs. So all the beetles, not all the beetles, but most of the beetles and other folks, they all have grub life cycles that live underground. And so grubs can get really bad if you have Japanese beetles. That's where it mostly creates a problem. And so with this, the life cycle of Japanese beetles is in the summer. They come out, they're pretty much all gone now. And they lay eggs in the soil. Those eggs hatch and they feed during the fall. And so they feed heavily. They're tiny, they're small, and they move around a bunch. And so they will feed during the fall, and then they'll overwinter underground. And in the spring, they grow large enough that they stop basically moving. So they stay put. And they don't eat anymore, and they kind of live under the grass. So you see how this grass is not dead out here is because they killed off all of this grass, and they noticed it in the spring, the clients did. And so this is all birds, raccoons, skunks, other kinds of insect eating friends that know that those grubs are there. And so they're digging in the grass in order to get at the grubs. So the dead grass is a consequence of the grubs. The ripped up turf is a consequence of the other animals trying to get at those grubs. And so I've seen it many times where, so the grubs will completely eat off the roots of the grass, and so they'll take, and it's basically like cutting the sod, and then you have raccoons that come in and they just roll strips of that grass up, and it'll roll right up, and so it looks like someone has cut sod and then rolled it up, and they're using that to get at those big fat grubs. And so it's a really interesting thing. And so with grubs, we have always had at least as I rank my weeds based on how easy they are to get out. That is absolutely true. My favorite weeds, sorry to change the subject on everybody here, but favorite weeds to pull, buttonweed is up there. Spurge is another one that is so satisfying and wonderful to pull because they have roots that are about this long, but the plant flares out like 1.5 inches. And so you get the whole thing taken out in one fell swoop. And so it's those are my other favorite ones to pull. When we get into the bromes and the grasses and other things like that, those are my least favorite, along with thistles. So we should talk about thistles sometime soon as well. But back to grubs. So there are you have a lot of folks who say to put nematodes in the ground. And so nematodes are little tiny insect worm kind of guys that will feed and kill grubs. And so they'll find them and they'll eat them, and they'll kill those. It's really difficult to control, and we don't really know what happens. There's so little research that is done on what happens under the soil. We don't really know what happens with all these different kinds of things. And so with nematodes, they can go in and they can handle and kill some of them, but we don't know how effective it is. We don't know if it's working just because of the ups and downs, the life cycle of Japanese beetles and grubs. We don't really know. Then for a long time, there has been to put bacteria in the ground that will kill the grubs of, and we know it will kill the grubs of Japanese beetles. And it's a BT, it's a bacteria that gets in there. And it's also called milky spore is another thing. But that has been, a lot of research has been done around that. And it's been mostly debunked that actually works. So I don't recommend using any sort of bacteria, so milky spore, anything like that. The best way that we can handle Japanese beetles is by reducing. So in the summer, when the Japanese beetles are out there, if you go out every morning, it's kind of fun, kind of terrible routine, but it is what it is. And we've got a bunch of videos about Japanese beetles on here at minnesotagardening.com. But you can go and you can pull the Japanese beetles off, kill them, feed them to your chickens, whatever you want to do. But leave the ones that have, there's a white spot on their thorax, on their forehead. And with that is a predatory wasp that will kill the Japanese beetles and keep them from reproducing. And so that's getting the balance back into whack for Japanese beetles versus, so they're not just overwhelming everything. And so we've had here in Minnesota, and I've heard throughout most of the Midwest, the Japanese beetle year has been really, really down. I don't know if that's because it's been so damn hot and dry, exactly what that is, but it's a low year for Japanese beetles. So we haven't had too many. So grubs, therefore, shouldn't be a huge problem for everybody. So grubs, I just leave alone unless they're killing your grass, unless you're having issues like that one, that picture I just showed. I would just not worry about them. They are not a big problem in the landscape. And if you have dead grass, plant perennials. And so you can plant a lot of native friends in there. So that's what I've got today. I hope you have enjoyed this live. We're going to try and do this every Friday at 9:30 a.m. So just come back to minnesotagardening.com and we will be here with you. So you can come to minnesotagardening.com and just click on the live video. I'm also going to share real quick. If you have questions about landscape things, there are a bunch of different ways you can work with us and would love to have you. So there's Minnesota Gardening Community, which is free for everybody. So if you go to minnesotagardening.com and click on Work with Brad, you can get there. Then we also have the Minnesota Gardening Club, which is $10 a month, and more than happy to have people join that. We go in depth and we have weekly work that we do there and make sure everybody stays up to date on where they're supposed to be. Then coaching sessions. So you can have a 30-minute or 3 30-minute coaching sessions and save some money there. And then we work in person, landscape design, corporate clients, those kinds of things. And just click on schedule assessment to get together and talk about those. So you can find this all at minnesotagardening.com. I hope everybody comes back next week. If you have any questions, just let me know, but be back here next week at 9:30. So Fridays at 9:30 at minnesotagardening.com. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.